Good afternoon. So, privileged being in front of you today. I wanted to join Ben in apologizing for not being an engineer or a scientist. I'm not even a lawyer, actually. I'm a political scientist. But then I realized that I'm actually a bureaucrat, one of those who should put on a rocket and send to space. So please forgive me if I say things that may not sound right, but I'll try and give you a sense of the idea that our Director General have put forward now already a couple of years ago, and to put this in the context of the European Space Agency programs. But before I do that, I've digged up this picture that dates back to, you may have seen it, it's been used several times, but this actually was developed by me 15 years ago, when ESA embarked itself in developing an exploration program called Aurora, of which today ExoMars is the legacy. Just to say that I've been around maybe a number of years in the exploration business at international level, and I've seen several programs being conceived and then being forgotten. And but we still have this idea that exploration has to serve humanity and has to serve the interest of humankind, of course, but also has to provide economic incentive to humankind. And this is the reason why, personally, I like the idea the Moon Village being more in the sense of expansion of human activities in space and exploration itself. I was having a discussion at lunch. Of course, there are lots of things that needs to be explored, discovered, on Mars, for example. But I do believe, and the Moon Village goes in that sense, that we now have the technology, we now have the experience to envision recurrent and permanent activities and presence on the surface of a celestial body like the Moon. Again, what our Director General is trying to take stock of is the new landscape of space activities. We have a number of players that is constantly growing. We have here in this very room a number of industries that were not even in existence 10 years ago. So there's a new world that is coming up that requires even a traditional space agency to rethink themselves. Our Director General likes to call this Space 4.0, which is the equivalent of what you have seen in New Space. And he has developed these 4 eyes, very similar to ISU 3 eyes, but these 4 eyes that our strategy should be aligned to inform, to create new knowledge, to enable exploration, to enable scientific discoveries, of course, to innovate, to provide a stimulus to innovation for economic development, to inspire the new generation, because we know that space is a powerful tool in this respect, but also to enable peaceful cooperation among nations globally. And where do we stand today? Today we have, as you know, the International Space Station, which is a wonderful piece of hardware, a great partnership, not yet a global one, but a great partnership. The space station has enabled women and men for many, many nations to live and work in space for, well, now 17 years without interruption. So it's a great achievement. I'm not going to criticize this. The space station will be with us for the next 10 years. And I personally believe it's time that the community, but even humanity, start thinking what will be next after the space station. Today, Europe is committed to the space station until 2024. There will be talks to extend the life of the space station in the next decade. We know that the hardware is certified until the end of the next, to extend the space station beyond 2028. The space station is certified until 2028, exactly, the hardware. But it's time that we start thinking of something that brings humanity beyond LEO and creates the conditions for a truly global partnership. Today, if you talk to our Chinese colleagues, they argue that you shouldn't be calling this the International Space Station because China is not part of it. I can't agree with that. So, of course, there have been lots of thinking among the spacefaring nations, and not only. You may have heard of the International Space Exploration Coordination Group that we created back in 2010, exactly to start preparing and put together plans from the different nations and different space agencies to create a common exploration plan. This is taking time to take shape. Today you may go on the ISAC website, you will find what is called the Global Exploration Roadmap. A third version of this GER, as it's called, Global Exploration Roadmap, is being prepared. There are 14 nations being represented in the group. I would argue that this group today is just a collection of the different plans. It lacks the ability to create something truly global. You know that the Americans, Europeans are discussing a cislunar station that will eventually represent the next step of the ISS, and on the basis of this presence in the lunar vicinity, they're planning for missions on the surface of the moon, which is all very exciting. At the same time, our Director General thought that because these plans are still in the making, he thought of proposing the vision of a moon village. Now, the moon village is today not an ESA program. It's not a program of the European Space Agency as such. It's, as the name says, as I'm presenting it, is a vision. Is the call to the community to get together and jointly develop an open-ended, permanent presence on the moon surface. And this is the reason why we're working with all of you, and we will be trying to engage all of you to give this vision a concrete realization. The way we envision the moon village is, as our Director General likes to say, is an open-ended ensemble open to multiple users for multiple uses. So we are not trying to define from the very beginning what the moon village should be made of, what should be the aim. What we are trying to achieve is a community of interested users that can conduct operations on the surface of the moon in a respectful manner and, of course, in a lawful manner. And that opens the discussion what can be done lawfully on the moon, given today's principles and given the evolution that these principles will have to undergo. We believe that such a concept is also the opportunity to define new alliances between traditional space industry and non-space industry, between the public sector active in space and the private sector. So we believe there is room to create a new paradigm for space activities. And the Luxembourg initiative, what we've heard today, the interest of the mining industry is already an example of how we are trying to expand space activities outside of the usual community. We also hope to achieve, through this idea, a powerful inspirational tool for the younger generation worldwide. Of course, the Moon Village will require not only activities to be conducted on the surface of the Earth, but in our mind, we hope that this will open new markets for the utilities that will be required. Someone mentioned earlier on that the most important thing on the Moon is farming, is producing what is needed on the surface to sustain life, which is true. But at the same time, if you want to have a greenhouse on the Moon, you need to have power, you need to have oxygen, you need to have water. And this is part of the market that we hope the idea of the Moon Village will help. It's new markets and new services that we hope our idea will help establish. Again, as I was saying before, I like to depict this not as much as exploration, but rather as expansion. We really hope, in the same way we have created a space economy today on Earth, we hope one day to create a lunar economy. I think it was mentioned earlier on in some of the presentations. I think there is the potential, and in this room we have seen some examples. There are the potential, the technology that can achieve a truly economically viable presence outside of the low Earth orbit. And we hope that the Moon Village will help to achieve this. But because at ESA we are a space agency, of course you wouldn't be happy only if I talk about a concept that requires more concrete examples. So I have a series of activities that we are conducting at ESA that we hope will help the emergence of this community that will create eventually the Moon Village. One is this that has been mentioned earlier on, the idea of demonstrating the ability to extract drinkable water from the surface of the Moon. There is a request for quotation for a demonstration study, but the idea is here to propose this to our member states as a self-sustaining activity in our portfolio at the next ministerial in 2019. So indeed, we foresee this again as a partnership with commercial providers, where the ESA investment, the investment of our member state, will be capped to a certain limit. And again, this is something that we will be proposing to member states, that we will be studying over the next months, but is not yet decided. So take it as an expression of intention by ESA, but like all international organizations, we depend very much from what our member states allow us to do. The other example of what we are doing to prepare and to be credible about the Moon Village is a demonstration mission on the surface of the Moon. Again, this is being discussed with international partners in the frame of the ISET group, in the frame of the ISS partnership, and is aimed at demonstrating the ability to land and operate on the surface of the Moon. When I see the goals 2030, even though I'm an ESA person myself, I don't find the goal a very ambitious one. But this is the status of things at the moment. I feel a certain ambition in meetings like this one, and I'm happy to see this, but be aware that the decision makers, the space decision makers, are very more careful than what you may want them to be. We have an astronaut center in Germany. They will be building a lunar analog terrain. They want to start preparing our astronauts, and not only, but also the scientific and the industrial community to prepare for operations on the surface of the Moon. So there will be this lunar analog facilities that is being built in Cologne. The European Astronaut Center is on the premises of the German Aerospace Center. And at the same time, next to this analog terrain, we will also be building an habitation module. So to start training and preparing for surface operations on the moon. So these three examples, and I may have more, just to give you a sense that on one side we have a concept for international cooperation, a concept for a new way of doing businesses in space, but not necessarily only with the traditional space community. And we also have the traditional space hardware or space operations activities that you may expect in a space agency. This concludes my brief presentation. We will be having a session on Thursday in Adelaide at 1:45, where our Director General will speak again about the Moon Village vision, where the newly created Moon Village Association, of which some of you are representatives, will also be invited to speak. We have prepared a moon declaration open for signature by interested parties, and we hope to galvanize and to bring together interested players so that the moon and a permanent presence on the moon surface will be at the top of the agenda of the space community, and not only, and that's why it's very interesting to have this forum here with the engineering school, with the mining community. I was saying to bring the space community, but also the non-space community together to what we believe it's a goal for the benefit of humankind. Thank you very much.
Have we got time for one question?
It's very, very exciting to be able to come to an event like this and to realise that what we've just been hearing about is actually quite real and believable, and it's not just pipe dreams anymore. So, to keep things moving, our next speaker is Mark Saracen. He's the Head of Space Affairs at the Government of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, and as we've been hearing all day, Luxembourg is the flavour of the month and everybody's very keen to hear what's happening. Thank you.